Maya Thorne's world was spun from the finest silk, not the rough linen of her ancestors. Or so she believed. Her childhood was a tapestry woven with sun-drenched afternoons, the scent of her mother's baking, and her father's booming, reassuring laughter. They lived in a charming, albeit modest, house on Elm Street, in a town small enough to feel like a warm hug, large enough to have a decent bookstore. She was their only child, their cherished daughter, heading to her senior year of college with a scholarship to study architecture, a passion born from her father, David, an amateur woodworker who spent weekends building elaborate birdhouses. Her mother, Eleanor, a kind-eyed librarian, filled their home with books and quiet melodies, teaching Maya that stories held power. At 21, Maya was poised, intelligent, and utterly secure in her identity. She had her mother's graceful hands, her father's steady gaze, and a future as neatly planned as the blueprints she meticulously drafted. There were no shadows in her past, no whispers of family secrets, just an open road, brightly lit. One crisp autumn morning, the kind that smelled of fallen leaves and distant wood smoke, Maya sat at the kitchen table, poring over design sketches for her final project. Eleanor hummed softly as she made coffee, the aroma mingling with the rich scent of the autumn air wafting through the open window. "Big day today, sweetheart?" Eleanor asked, her voice as warm as the mug she set before Maya. Maya nodded, pushing a stray strand of auburn hair from her eyes. "Just trying to perfect this facade. Professor Davies is ruthless." Eleanor chuckled, then her gaze drifted towards the small antique wooden box on the windowsill. It was a simple, unadorned box, carved from dark-aged wood, nothing like the polished oak furniture Eleanor usually favored. It had always been there, as long as Maya could remember, tucked away amidst Eleanor's collection of vintage teacups. Maya had never seen it opened. "Sometimes," Eleanor said softly, almost to herself, "the most beautiful facades hide the deepest foundations." Maya looked up, catching her mother's distant gaze. "Is that an architectural tip, or a life lesson, Mom?" Eleanor smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "A bit of both, I suppose. Drink your coffee, darling. You have a castle to build, even if it's just on paper." Maya dismissed the odd comment. Her mother had a penchant for philosophical musings. The box, a silent sentinel, held no meaning for her beyond being another quirky antique in their cozy home. It sat there, unassuming, patiently waiting for the day its secrets would finally be unveiled. Life continued its gentle rhythm for Maya. Days bled into weeks, filled with architectural drafts, library quiet with her mother, and the comforting scent of sawdust from her father's workshop. The antique wooden box on the windowsill remained a forgotten detail, an unassuming piece of their perfectly ordinary home. It was a rainy Saturday, the kind that trapped you indoors, when Eleanor decided it was time to finally clear out the attic. Dust motes danced in the sparse light filtering through the grimy window panes, illuminating a landscape of forgotten memories. Yellowed newspapers, trunks overflowing with moth-eaten clothes, and boxers labeled with faded handwriting. "Oh, look at this," Eleanor exclaimed, pulling a worn photo album from a stack. It was filled with pictures of her in David's early years, awkward teenage poses, college graduations, their modest wedding. Maya smiled, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. This was her history, tangible and real. As they sifted through the boxers, Maya stumbled upon a small unmarked crate tucked away in a shadowed corner. It felt heavier than it looked, not just with weight, but with a strange, almost unsettling energy. Curiosity pricked at her. This box wasn't labeled with Eleanor's elegant script, nor did it bear David's rough, practical hand. It felt foreign. She prized open the lid. Inside, nestled amongst layers of ancient tissue paper, wasn't what she expected. No baby clothes, no faded report cards. Instead, there was a stack of old, brittle newspaper clippings, their headlines screaming in bold, dramatic fonts. "Child abducted from local park. Family devastated. Mystery deepens. Where is Lily Mae Collins? Desperate parents plead for a return of missing daughter." Maya frowned, confused. Why would her parents keep these? They were from the town just 2 counties over, decades ago. A cold case she vaguely remembered hearing whispers about Lily Mae Collins, a 3-year-old, vanished without a trace from a community fair back in 1999. It was a local tragedy, but one unconnected to their family. She reached deeper into the box. Beneath the clippings, she found a tiny porcelain doll, its painted eyes wide and unnerving. And then, a small laminated school photo. It was a picture of a little girl, no older than 4 or 5, with startlingly familiar auburn hair and a small, distinctive birthmark just above her left eyebrow. A birthmark. Exactly like Maya's. Her breath hitched. Her fingers trembled as she picked up the photo, comparing it to the reflection in the dusty attic mirror. The same wide, curious eyes, the same small, almost imperceptible freckle on the bridge of the nose, the same unique, almost star-shaped birthmark. It couldn't be. It was impossible. But the cold dread coiling in her stomach told her otherwise. This wasn't just a coincidence. This was a direct hit to the very core of her existence. The silk ribbon of her life was starting to fray, revealing something dark and tangled beneath. Maya descended from the attic, the small photo clutched so tightly in her hand that its edges bit into her palm. The newspaper clippings, now crumpled, were tucked into the pocket of her jeans. The familiar scent of her mother's baking, once comforting, now felt like a cruel deception. Eleanor was in the kitchen, humming, kneading dough on the polished countertop. David was in his workshop, the rhythmic hum of his saw, a steady heartbeat through the walls. Their domestic tableau, once a symbol of perfect love, now seemed like an elaborate stage set. Mom. Maya's voice was a shaky whisper, barely audible above the gentle sounds of the house. Eleanor turned, flour dusting her apron, her kind eyes full of warmth. Everything okay, sweetie? Find any treasures up there? Maya held out the photograph. Who is this? Eleanor's hands froze. The smile vanished from her face, replaced by a mask of stunned horror. Her gaze darted from the photo to Maya's face, then back again, as if searching for an escape route. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her as pale as the flower. On the counter. Maya, where did you find that? Her voice was barely a breath, fragile as glass. In a box, in the attic. With these, Maya pulled the newspaper clippings from her pocket, unfolding them. Their grim headlines stark against the cheerful kitchen light. Lily Mae Collins, missing child, 1999. The humming from the workshop abruptly stopped. David appeared in the doorway, saw the photo, the clippings, and his shoulders slumped as if a great weight had just settled upon them. His usually jovial face hardened into a mask of weary defeat. Silence descended, heavy and suffocating. It was the kind of silence that screams louder than any shout. A silence that held decades of unspoken words, of buried truths. Maya felt her perfect world cracking. The foundation she'd always trusted giving way beneath her feet. She looks like me, Mom, Maya said, her voice rising, cracking with a desperation she didn't know she possessed. She has my birthmark. Why do you have her picture? Who is she? Eleanor closed her eyes, a single tear tracing a path through the flour on her cheek. David moved to her side, wrapping an arm around her, his gaze on Maya filled with a profound sadness she couldn't yet comprehend. Maya, David began, his voice hoarse. Sit down. There's something we need to tell you. The air thickened, pressing down on Maya, until she felt she couldn't breathe. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs. This wasn't just a treasure from the attic. This was the unearthing of a lifetime of carefully constructed lies. And Maya knew, with a chilling certainty, that nothing would ever be the same again. The castle she thought she was building, the life she thought she knew, was about to crumble. The confession, when it finally came, was delivered in hushed tones, punctuated by Eleanor's quiet sobs and David's heavy sighs. They sat Maya down in the living room, the very space where she'd celebrated birthdays and Christmases, where she'd felt so unconditionally loved. Now it felt cold, alien. She wasn't Lily Mae, Eleanor began, her voice trembling. Not exactly, but you aren't our biological daughter, Maya. The words hit Maya like a physical blow, stealing the air from her lungs. Not their daughter. Every memory, every cherished moment, twisted into a lie. She stared at them. The two people who were her world, their faces etched with a pain that mirrored her own, but layered with guilt. David took over, his voice a low rumble. "We found you, Maya, on the steps of the old St. Jude's orphanage, on a freezing November night, just a few weeks after the news about Lily May broke. You were tiny, maybe 2 years old, wrapped in a threadbare blanket. No note, no identification, just you." Eleanor interjected. "We'd been trying for years to have a child. Doctors said it was impossible. When we saw you, it felt like a miracle. We took you in, privately. We didn't go through the official channels because we were afraid they'd take you away. Afraid you belonged to that cold case. We loved you, Maya, from the very first second." They spoke of their fear, their desperate longing for a child, their decision to raise her as their own, to bury the past, to protect her from the harsh glare of public scrutiny. They showed her a single, yellowed newspaper article they had kept, a small piece about the orphanage temporarily closing its doors due to budget cuts. The same week they found her, they painted a picture of 2 lonely, hopeful people making a monumental, albeit illegal, choice born purely out of love. Maya listened, a storm raging inside her. Love, was this love? A love built on a foundation of such a profound lie. The birthmark, the old photo, the newspaper clippings. They weren't about Lily May, not directly. They were about her. And somewhere, out there, was her real past. Family grieving a lost child, or worse. Who am I? Maya whispered, the question tearing from her gut. Who are my real parents? And why was I on the steps of an orphanage? Her parents could offer no answers, only apologies and tears. The box in the attic, they confessed, was Eleanor's own secret stash of those old newspaper clippings. Her quiet, agonizing fear that one day, the truth about the missing child would connect to Maya, a fear that had now, ironically, led Maya right to it. The silk ribbon of Maya's life didn't just fray, it snapped, unraveling into 1,000 tangled threads. The days after the revelation were a haze of numb disbelief for Maya. The house on Elm Street, once her sanctuary, now felt like a gilded cage. Every touch from Eleanor, every shared laugh with David, was tainted with the knowledge of their deception. Their love felt less like a protective shield, and more like a carefully constructed prison. She spent hours online, delving into the cold case of Lily May Collins, the missing child from Willow Creek. The news archives were grim, grainy photos of weeping parents, police appeals, fruitless searches in the dense woods surrounding the town. Lily May, fair-haired and blue-eyed, vanished on a sunny afternoon in the summer of 1999. The articles always mentioned her distinctive dimples and a small silver locket she wore. Maya compared the details to her own faint memories, her own physical traits. No dimples, no locket. And her hair was auburn, not fair. The birthmark was the only chilling commonality to the small photo found in the box. A photo Eleanor and David now swore was of Maya, taken by a street photographer years ago and misplaced. By the time they found her, a convenient explanation for a damning piece of evidence. The official story of Lily May Collins didn't perfectly align with Maya's own circumstances, but the timing was eerily close. If she was indeed 2 years old in November 1999, then she would have been born in 1997. Lily May vanished in the summer of 1999. Could Maya have been Lily May's younger sister? Born to the same parents but somehow separated. The theories spun wildly in her head, each one more unsettling than the last. She needed to go to Willow Creek. She needed to see the place, to touch the soil where her supposed true family had once walked. Her parents, desperate to mend the gaping wound in their relationship, agreed, albeit reluctantly. David offered to drive her. Eleanor packed a lunch, her eyes red-rimmed and distant. The silence in the car was thick with unspoken apologies and unasked questions. Willow Creek was a quiet, sleepy town, still carrying the faint echo of its past tragedy. The park where Lily May vanished was now a modern playground, but the old gnarled oak tree at its edge stood like a silent sentinel, its branches heavy with unspoken sorrow. Maya walked the grounds, her heart aching for a child she didn't know, for a past that was stolen. She looked at the old photographs of Lily May's parents, the heartbroken Mr. and Mrs. Collins, forever trapped in their grief. There was no flicker of recognition. no instinctual pull. But the ache remained. This was where her search began. Not for Lily May, perhaps, but for the missing pieces of herself. For the truth that had been buried under decades of love and lies. The local library in Willow Creek was a small, unassuming building, smelling of old paper and hushed secrets. It was here that Maya hoped to find more answers, perhaps an old town directory, or obscure local news archives that hadn't made it online. The head librarian, a woman with kind, weary eyes named Agnes, looked up as Maya approached the counter. Agnes had been in Willow Creek her entire life, a quiet fixture in a town that had seen its share of quiet tragedies. Maya, carefully, introduced herself. I'm doing some research on the Lily May Collins case. My parents grew up nearby, and I'm just trying to understand the history. She omitted the truth, the painful, raw truth of her own connection. For now, Agnes nodded, her gaze sharpening. Ah, Lily May. That was a heartbreak for this town. Poor Martha and Robert, never the same after that. She pulled out a dusty binder, filled with more clippings, more police reports. They were a complicated family, the Collinses, not just the disappearance, you understand. Maya leaned forward. Complicated, what do you mean? Agnes hesitated, her gaze drifting to the window, as if seeing ghosts in the sunlit street. Martha, Lily May's mother. She had a sister, younger, a bit wild, they said. Ran off to the city young, got into trouble. People whispered. But she always came back, usually after a quarrel with Martha, or when she needed money. Did she have children? Maya asked, a strange premonition chilling her. Agnes frowned, thinking. Now, that's a hazy memory. There was talk, yes, a baby. But Martha always denied it. Said her sister was lying. Something about a paternity dispute, a bad man. The sister, her name was Eleanor. Eleanor Vance. The name hit Maya like a thunderbolt. Eleanor, her mother, Vance, her mother's maiden name. Maya felt the world spin. Her Eleanor? The gentle librarian, the quiet baker, the woman who claimed she couldn't have children. Eleanor Vance, Lily May Collins's aunt. What happened to Eleanor Vance? Maya asked, her voice barely a whisper. Agnes sighed. She vanished. Not long after Lily May, people said she just packed up and left. Couldn't stand the gossip or the pain. Or maybe she was afraid. Afraid of what? Or of whom? A new, far more twisted narrative began to unfold in Maya's mind. A knot tightened in her stomach. The gentle, loving mother she knew was not just a woman who had adopted her, but a woman with a direct, unspoken link to the very tragedy that defined this town. A blood link. The silk ribbon wasn't just frayed. It was tied into an impossible knot, pulling her into a past far deeper and darker than she had ever imagined. Maya left the library in a daze. The gentle hum of the town's quiet afternoon, a stark contrast to the frantic drumbeat of her heart. Eleanor Vance, her mother's maiden name, a missing sister to the Collins family. It was too much of a coincidence. It was the truth, staring her in the face, mocking the carefully constructed narrative of her entire life. She drove aimlessly, eventually pulling into the parking lot of the old Willow Creek Community Center. It was a drab, brick building, long neglected. But Maya remembered a detail from one of the older newspaper clippings. A small, forgotten annex behind the main hall, once used for storage, where Lily May had reportedly been seen playing just before her disappearance. The side door creaked open, revealing a dusty, disused room. Cobwebs hung like tattered curtains, and the air was thick with the scent of damp earth and forgotten things. A single, grimy window looked out onto a overgrown patch of weeds. As her eyes adjusted to the dim light, Maya noticed something tucked away in a corner, half hidden by a stack of old splintered wooden crates. It was a child's rocking horse, faded and chipped, but still recognizable. And next to it, scrawled on the wall in faded, almost illegible crayon, were two childish stick figures. One tall, with a simple dress. The other, much smaller, holding its hand. And beneath them, in blocky uneven letters, Lily plus baby, baby, not just baby, but her baby. Eleanor Vance's baby. Maya's mind reeled. If Lily May's aunt, her mother, Eleanor Vance had a baby, and that baby was her. Then how did that connect to Lily May's disappearance? Had her mother not just found her on an orphanage doorstep, but taken her? Had she been with Lily May when she disappeared? The possibilities were horrifying. She pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling, and called David. Not Eleanor. She couldn't face Eleanor. Dad, she choked out, tears finally breaking free. I'm in Willow Creek, at the old community center, and I found something, Mom. Mom wasn't just a stranger who adopted me. She's Lily May Collins's aunt, Eleanor Vance. Silence. A long, agonizing silence on the other end of the line. Then, David's voice, raw with the grief Maya had never heard. I knew this day would come, Maya. I knew I have to tell you everything, but not over the phone. Come home, please, come home. The silk ribbon was gone. All that was left were tangled threads of a family history woven with deceit, fear, and a love so desperate it had swallowed the truth whole. Maya was no longer just the product of a simple adoption. She was the epicenter of a decades-old mystery, a quiet echo of a past that refused to stay buried. And the next revelation, she instinctively knew, would be far more painful than any she had faced yet. Maya drove home in a blur, her hands gripping the steering wheel. The community center's dusty secrets clinging to her like a shroud. When she finally pulled into the driveway, David was waiting, his face drawn, his usual easygoing demeanor replaced by a haunted pallor. Eleanor was nowhere in sight. He led her into his workshop. The familiar scent of sawdust and wood glue, no longer comforting but oppressive. He pulled up 2 stools amidst half-finished birdhouses and discarded planks. Your mother, Eleanor Vance. She is indeed Lily May Collins's aunt, David began, his voice barely a whisper. And she did have a baby, you, Maya, her child. Born out of wedlock, to a man who abandoned her. A secret she carried alone, in a time when such things brought unbearable shame. Maya stared, speechless. Her mother, a single unwed mother, decades ago. It was a twist she hadn't anticipated. Lily May, David continued, his gaze distant, was a difficult child, prone to tantrums, often wandering off. Martha, her mother, was unstable, prone to severe depression. Her husband, Robert, was rarely home, always working, or so he claimed. He had a gambling problem, a bad one. Then came the true devastating core of the secret. On the day Lily May disappeared, David said, his voice cracking, Eleanor was visiting Martha. She brought you with her, a tiny baby, just over 2 years old. Martha was having one of her episodes. She became enraged, convinced Eleanor was trying to steal her husband's attention. Even her child's. She grabbed Lily May, ran into the woods. Eleanor followed, trying to stop her. He paused, tears finally welling in his eyes. When Eleanor found them, she was hurting Lily May, shaking her, screaming at her. Lily May was crying, terrified. Eleanor intervened, trying to pull Martha off. In the struggle, Lily May fell. She hit her head on a rock. Maya gasped, a cold knot forming in her stomach. She died. David nodded, a single tear tracing a path down his weathered cheek. Instantly, Martha went into a complete breakdown. Eleanor, in a state of shock and terror, saw only one thing, her unstable sister. A dead child, and her own baby, you, standing witness. She knew no one would believe it was an accident. They'd blame her. They'd blame you, for being there. They'd take you away. He took a deep, shuddering breath. So she made a choice. A terrible, impossible choice. She buried Lily May right there, deep in the woods. And she ran with you. She kept you hidden, changed your name, gave you a new life. She couldn't bear the thought of you growing up in the shadow of that tragedy, of being linked to a mentally unstable mother and a dead child. When she found me, a lonely, heartbroken man, who'd also lost a child, we built this new life, for you, to protect you. The truth was a brutal blow, yet it wasn't the simple kidnapping Maya had feared. It was a desperate act of a mother, twisted by fear and a tragic accident, driven by a fierce, misguided love to protect her child from a horrifying legacy. Eleanor hadn't just adopted her. She had saved her, at an unimaginable cost. The weight of the truth was almost unbearable. Lily May's death wasn't a disappearance. It was a tragic accident, covered up by her own mother, Maya's mother, to protect her. And David, the kind, steady man she called Dad, had been an accomplice. Driven by his own grief and love, Maya found Eleanor in the living room, curled on the sofa, a crumpled tissue clutched in her hand. Her eyes swollen and red, Maya sat beside her, not with anger, but with a profound, aching sorrow. "Why, Mom?" Maya whispered. "Why not tell me? Why not tell the police the truth?" Eleanor sat up, her gaze raw. "Because of Martha. She was never well, Maya. After Lily May, she deteriorated. If the truth came out, they would have put her away. And Robert Collins was a cruel man. He abused Martha financially, emotionally. He would have blamed me. He would have found you, my baby, and used you for whatever twisted purpose he could." She looked at Maya, her eyes pleading. "I tried, Maya. I tried to tell someone. I went to the police once, anonymously. They dismissed it as a crackpot call, another desperate tip from someone trying to get attention. No one believed that Martha, the grieving mother, could have been involved. Robert controlled the narrative, the public sympathy. He was a master manipulator. He made sure the police focused elsewhere." Eleanor revealed more. Robert Collins wasn't just a gambler. He was involved in minor criminal activities, always skirting the law. He had powerful, unsavory connections. Eleanor truly believed that exposing the truth would not only destroy Martha, but put Maya in grave danger. It was a choice between protecting her child from a world of police investigations, public scrutiny, and a potentially dangerous biological father, versus confessing a crime born of an accident. "We thought about telling you every single day," David added, joining them. "But every time, we saw you happy, thriving, untouched by the darkness of that past. We just couldn't." Maya understood the impossible choice, the desperate love. But understanding didn't erase the pain of the deception. Her entire life was a carefully constructed lie, built on the grave of another child, protected by silence and fear. She was not just a survivor of a tragedy, but a secret keeper herself. Now burdened with a truth that could shatter two families and a small town, she needed time. Time to grieve the life she thought she had, to process the terrifying reality of her origin, and to decide what, if anything, she would do with this devastating truth. The days that followed were a blur of raw emotion. Maya couldn't look at her parents without seeing the burden they had carried, the impossible choice they had made. But she also couldn't look at herself without seeing Lily May's ghost, the child, whose tragic death was the very foundation of her existence. She pulled away from her college life, from her friends, from her meticulously planned future. The blueprints she once loved now seemed meaningless. How could she build a life when her own foundation was built on such a lie? She spent hours wandering the quiet streets of her town, a stranger in her own skin. She visited the local cemetery, finding a quiet corner far from the public eye. She talked to Lily May, to the child she never knew, the silent victim whose memory now intertwined with her own. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the wind. "I'm so sorry." Her parents tried to bridge the chasm that had opened between them. Eleanor cooked her favorite meals. David left her small, hand-carved wooden figures on her desk. But their gestures, once filled with comforting love, now felt like desperate pleas for forgiveness. The weight of the secret grew heavier with each passing day. Maya knew she couldn't keep it buried forever. It was a ticking time bomb, threatening to explode not just her life, but the lives of everyone connected to her. The thought of exposing Eleanor's secret, of destroying her gentle mother and kind father, sent a wave of nausea through her. But the thought of living with the lie, of allowing Lily May's true story to remain untold, was equally unbearable. She researched the Collins family more deeply. Robert Collins had died years ago, a supposed heart attack. Martha had been institutionalized, living out her days in a quiet, forgotten care facility, her mind lost to the depths of her illness. The direct threats were gone, but the legacy of the lie remained. Maya knew she had a choice. She could protect her parents' secret, continue the charade, and live a life built on a lie. Or she could expose the truth, no matter how painful, no matter the consequences, and finally claim her own identity, not as a stolen child, but as someone who had chosen to bring light to the darkest corners of her past. The decision would define her. It would be the ultimate act of courage, or the ultimate act of betrayal. And she knew, with a chilling certainty, that the quiet echoes of the past would never truly fade until she chose her path. If Maya's journey touched your heart, please give this video a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow. And if you want to dive deeper into more tales of human resilience, courage, and the unraveling of life's biggest mysteries, then make sure you subscribe to Inspire Tales and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next story. Thank you for joining me on this incredibly emotional journey. Remember, sometimes finding your true self means venturing into the echoes of the past. Goodbye for now, and I'll see you in the next story.